Alright, we're live. So, this is obviously me in a car. I have obviously never done this before, but we're going to see what happens and how it goes. So today, basically, I'm taking a trip, and I haven't streamed in a while because, you know, I'm working 7 days a week. But I wanted to see what I could do, and I found out I could stream from my phone. Now, obviously, I can't do this while I'm working, but thankfully today, I am not working. I am just going to pick my sister up, which is about a 40-minute drive away or so. I figured I would try out this streaming thing from my phone while I was driving and do a little talk about Go. So I guess today what I wanted to talk about was basically the Colossi Approach. So many players, what they don't realize is the Colossi Approach is, there's one or two things they don't usually realize. One is they think the Colossi Approach isn't that big of a deal. They learn it one time and they forget about it and they forget to keep practicing it. And that's not good enough. And then the second extreme is they do learn it and they only use it, and then they don't realize that the Colossi Approach is not a 100% perfect approach. So let's reestablish what the Colossi Approach is for. Now, for those of you who don't know what the Colossi Approach is, it's on my website. It's basically like a list of methods meant to give you a good move every single turn. It's basically a list of questions you can answer, a list of steps to approach any given situation and make a good move. And so the Colossi Approach, at any given time, will give you a good move. Now, this is not going to give you a 100% perfect move because it takes really, really accurate judgment and really, really good skills and knowledge base to play like a professional. And there are some professionals that have seen the Colossi Approach and was like, oh yeah, this is really good, but they realize that there are some exceptions. So it's only good like 90% of the time. So for the last 10%, it requires a lot of accurate judgment and accurate skill set, and also stylistic play. There's many ways you could say the Colossi Approach is not perfect, but it's not meant to be perfect. So the Colossi Approach is not meant to make you a professional player, it's meant to make you a Don. That's the whole purpose of the Colossi Approach, and Don players can then expand off the Colossi Approach. So the Colossi Approach will just basically give you all of your basics, all of your foundations, to make all of your basics really spot on, and to give you a very good foundation to then build off of to improve as you get stronger. And now, what I like to say to get to Don is, there's a common joke I say with my friends to get Don, is you have to stop making 0-point, negative-point moves, and stop making like general bad mistakes. And to win at a Q level, it's whoever makes the least amount of mistakes wins. And it's one of my students also pointed this out, and he's like, I feel like the only reason I'm winning is because I'm making less mistakes than my opponents. And I was like, well, yeah, that's exactly what's happening. That's because Q players, unfortunately, can't play every single move as a good move. And when I say good move, I mean like a positive value move that gets you something, that does something for you, and not a move that has 0-point value and is basically like passing, or a move that is a negative value move. And negative value moves are probably the worst kinds of mistakes that you can do, because a negative value move is worse than passing. So for Q players, it's whoever makes the least amount of mistakes wins. And so to get to Don, you just have to not make any like bad mistakes. Like, you can make some slow moves. I wouldn't consider those mistakes. Mistakes are something you can punish, something that hurt you or are a detriment to you. Slow moves, it's not that they're bad for you, it's just that there's bigger moves. And that's what I think Q players need to really work on, is getting rid of all of those mistakes. So what I use the Colossi Approach for is to teach them that every single situation can be approached, and you can come up with a good move just using the Colossi Approach. So the Colossi Approach, ideally, well, if you can use it every single turn, at least semi-accurately, then it will give you a decent positive value move every single turn. It won't give you the best move. It won't give you the most strategically advanced best move either. But it will give you a good move that'll give you some type of value. Either you can attack your opponent, gains a profit, you can defend yourself to prevent an attack, you can defend yourself in Sente if you can. That's also something I've been teaching a lot lately, is how to defend in Sente. And then getting to the big move. And big move is open sides, open corners, open sides in the biggest areas. And then second line and first line is end game. Don't play that in the first half of the game. You shouldn't be playing second line and first line unless you're sliding to steal a base or points. Slides are not. Slides are second line, and those are the exceptions. But normally, second line and first line moves are not generally played in the opening, with the exception of slides, of course. So the Colossi Approach, the whole point of it is actually to help make your game have a very strong foundation and a very strong level of basics. And it's not just something you look at once and then just assume you got it and then move on and never look at it again. The Colossi Approach should probably be revisited at least once a month. And this is after memorizing it. So and I would say memorizing it, it's more like you're supposed to know all the methods and have a general idea of how to answer the questions, but you should always revisit it like probably about once a month to make sure that you are following these steps, and just read it all, not just the 3 questions like where's my weakness, where's my opponent's weakness, where's the big moves, but read all of it. And that's also the attack and defense steps, that's also the strategic strategy steps, and stuff like that. So I would say the Colossi Approach should probably be revisited about once a month until you get it done. And even at a 1 dan or 2 dan, I'd probably revisit it a couple more times. I mean, I myself have done that to see where am I messing up the Colossi Approach, and critically ask yourself, am I messing up the Colossi Approach, or am I finding those exceptions? And that's what I had to do as a dan, because I tried to see if I could use a Colossi Approach as a dan, and I could, and I would do decent in my games. But I will always be a little bit short, and that's because I'm not pushing it I'm not pushing it to find those rare exceptions. And then when I started finding those rare exceptions, 80%, 90% of my moves would follow the Colossi Approach, and then I would find those exceptions, and then start using those exceptions to get a little bit ahead, and then go back to the Colossi Approach. So the Colossi Approach is a very good foundation, very good basics, and it can get you to 1 dan. I've had students who have gotten to 1 dan using just the Colossi Approach, but to excel past 1 dan, you will need to do a little bit more than that, and you will need to actually master some of the exceptions and some of the advanced strategies. But I think many players don't realize the Colossi Approach is not a bad thing to learn, but it's also not the only thing to learn. So there's 2 extremes, I believe, that I've been making mistakes with the Colossi Approach, and I want you guys to fully understand the Colossi Approach is meant to build your basics. It's meant to build your foundation, help you get to dan, but it will not get you to pro. It is not a 100% solution. It's just going to help give you a good move every single turn when you don't know what the best move is. And it's a very good thing for players who can get in situations and they're confused and they aren't sure what to do. Well, the Colossi Approach can really help with that. So with that being said, I want to talk about some common mistakes in the Colossi Approach that are made. And one of those, and I think is the biggest one, is counting. So counting is something that I think about adding to the Colossi Approach, and I do have counting and judgment, but I've noticed that they aren't counting the score, and they don't always know the score of the game. So counting is one of the most common Western mistakes that are made according to Asian professionals. That players don't count, or they don't judge a situation properly. And I'm going to agree with them, not just because they're pros, but because I think counting is very important. But then again, I'm very biased because I love to count, because I count like all the time. I always know the score, almost always know the score of the game, and I'm always counting the difference between variations, etc., etc. So I will say counting is one of my strong suits, so I may seem a bit biased here, but I still think it's a very valid strategy, and a valid mistake that many players are doing is that they don't count the board. They aren't counting what the score is, and they aren't counting the different results. So there's a couple things, a couple little levels that go into counting. One is counting the points and influence, and being able to judge influence, of course, and figuring out what the score on the board as the board stands, what's the points, and then judge the influence and the difference between the points, and compare the influences and see if it's about even, or if some player has an advantage or a disadvantage. So understanding how the board is, like what's the state of the board right now. And then there's the counting of exchanges, which means if I play A and he plays B, and I play this variation, how does it affect the scale of the points? How is the overall difference affected? So when I say scale the points, I don't mean how many points do you get. I mean how many points difference is between you and your opponent, and how did it affect it? Did it affect it in your favor? Did you gain 1 point more than your opponent? Or maybe if you're behind, did you catch up by 1 point? Did you lower the difference if you're behind, and did you raise the difference if you're ahead? And if not, then maybe you can count another variation and make that distinction as well. But what many players don't do is they aren't sure how to value a scenario, and that's the answer right there, is how you value a scenario. How do you determine if a scenario is good or not? Well, you count the board and then count how it affects the scale of the points. Did it affect it in your favor? If so, it's probably good. Can you make it even more in your favor? And that's how you determine if something's good or bad. Like for example, many players play Joseki blindly. Joseki are only Joseki on certain positions. They're not Joseki in every given situation. Like, you can play the high approach to the 3-4, and play that normal Joseki, but it's not good in every single scenario, so it's not good to play all the time. It's not Joseki all the time. Even though it's a very common Joseki and a very highly played Joseki, it's not played all the time. It's just like a 3-3 invasion is not played all the time, even though it's Joseki. It's played in a situational position.